evening and thank you very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Ritu Singh and Shreen is here with us with the day's top business and political stories.
Straight to the action on Dalal Street, where the market saw a big pullback rally fueled by strong Asian cues and snapped their three-day losing streak. So the Nifty rallied about 1.5% and the index ended just shy of the 10,900 mark. The Sensex also reclaiming 36,000. Broader markets slightly underperformed though, with both the Bank Nifty and the Nifty Midcap ending with gains of around 0.75%. But nevertheless, all the indices closing in the green. From equities to currencies, where the Indian rupee continued to remain under pressure after opening 16 paise higher, it slid to close at 71.04 against the dollar. Large amount of foreign outflows being seen as one of the key factors which have weighed on the rupee. But here's the big story tonight. It is D-Day for Theresa May. In a while from now, British lawmakers will take a decision on her deal for leaving the European Union. And from what we are picking up, most of her party lawmakers are expected to vote against the deal, potentially leading to a no-confidence vote against her government. A defeat in Parliament today will open up several uncertainties, including the option of the United Kingdom leaving the European Union without a deal or a second referendum on Brexit itself. CNBC's Steve Sedgwick is tracking the developments from Westminster, gives us a sneak peek of what to expect. Steve.
So here at Westminster, the build-up to the key Brexit withdrawal vote continues. It's a huge day for the government, a huge day for the Prime Minister, Theresa May. But it does look like, according to many of the MPs I've been speaking to, that there will be a majority of MPs who vote against the withdrawal bill this time round, having had the chance to actually vote on it 5 weeks after they initially thought they would do. The Prime Minister, for her part, looks resigned to some form of defeat on this one as well. But what she does next perhaps depends on the scale of her defeat today. Will she have enough hope from the voting to go back to the European Union and try to renegotiate some form of deal and then come back and get a second vote on the withdrawal bill in the hope of passing it so that Brexit can take place on March 29th as scheduled to do so in the Article 50 process? Or will there be a whole series of events which could lead to the demise of Mrs May? Possibly she would resign if she gets a big enough defeat against her, but more likely scenarios that she will try carrying on to push her vision of Brexit forward, despite the fact that hard Brexiteers on her party and DUP that supports her party are set to vote against her this evening. What seems very likely, though, is that the opposition Labour Party will come up with their own vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister, in the government, if indeed she does lose this vote this evening. That, in turn, if she were to lose it, could potentially lead to a general election. Other scenarios include the fact that there could be a no-deal Brexit, where there is no scenario where MPs can agree on a deal with the European Union, and actually the Brexit happens on March 29th with no deal in place with the EU. Or potentially another outside scenario could be the fact that in order to break the logjam, there is a second referendum on leaving Europe. Lots of scenarios all on the table as we get to this key vote here in Westminster. Steve Sedgwick in Westminster for CNBC.
Well, uncertain times there for Theresa May and for the UK. In fact, Theresa May has issued a final appeal to lawmakers, urging them to give the Brexit deal a second look ahead of the vote. She's warned that Brexit may not happen if the deal is not passed. We also reached out to a host of other experts to get a sense of their assessment on the impending Brexit deal vote and the implications, not just for the UK economy and the markets, but for the rest of the world as well.
When the history books are written, people will look at the decision. People will look at the decision of this House tomorrow and ask, did we deliver on the country's vote to leave the European Union? Did we safeguard our economy, our security and our union? Or did we let the British people down? I say we should deliver for the British people and get on with building a brighter future for our country.
It looks like she's going to lose the vote by about 160 votes. Corbyn is definitely going to call for no confidence, but I think it's doubtful that his no confidence motion will pass. So she's going to muddle on through. There are basically three scenarios that are going to happen at this point. We're either going to have a second referendum, she's going to have to delay Article 50, or we go to hard Brexit. Now, choice number 3, if she chooses to follow the hard Brexit choice, then yes, I think we're going to have a new election because 82% of Britons do not want a hard Brexit. So it looks very much like they're going to kick the can down the road and probably delay Article 50.
The ongoing diplomatic row between China and Canada has deepened after a Chinese court on Monday sentenced a Canadian man to be executed for drug smuggling, allegedly. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that it is of extreme concern that China has chosen to arbitrarily apply the death penalty. However, China has rejected that accusation. The country's state media has said that China is not putting pressure on Canada through this verdict, and any suggestion that it was doing so showed rude contempt of China's law. So the troubled relationship between China and Canada getting worse. Back home, India's trade deficit has narrowed to the lowest in 10 months for the month of December. It came in at a little over $13 billion as against $16.67 billion for November. And this was largely due to the dip in crude oil prices, which has reduced the burden on India's import bill. In fact, December oil imports coming in at over $10.5 billion as compared to $13.5 billion worth of oil we imported in November. So relief there on the trade deficit front. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley says that India needs a decisive leader and not an unworkable alliance with maverick leadership to satisfy the country's aspirations. In a Facebook post that he has sent from New York, Jaitley claimed that under the leadership of Narendra Modi, India rose up the ladder to become the 7th largest economy in the world. He goes on to add that they are still not satisfied with the 7 to 7.5% GDP growth and want to break the 8% barrier. Jaitley stressed that the prerequisite for ensuring growth is a decisive one is leadership, consistency in policy direction and a strong and stable government. Moreover, he claimed that India's fiscal discipline during the past 5 years has been amongst the best as compared to any preceding period. Well, as the countdown to Battle 2019 begins, the BJP is getting into poll mode. The party will hold 50 press conferences in the next 4 days. These media interactions will be led by Union Cabinet ministers and BJP chief ministers across the country, and they will aim to inform people about the developments during the winter session of Parliament and at the BJP National Convention. So watch out for that blitzkrieg of BJP ministers over the next 4 days. Meanwhile, there's no end to the stress faced by power distribution companies. Discoms have incurred a loss of more than 11,000 crore rupees in the first half of this financial year. That's almost 2,500 crore rupees more than the loss incurred a year earlier. Outstanding dues, meanwhile, have spiked by 24% yearly till October. This is according to official data. In an interview to CNBC TV 18, Power Secretary Ajay Bhalia said the group of ministers was considering allowing power generators' dues to be met through the bill discounting mechanism, along with a guarantee from states. Take a look.
From June to November, December, when I look at the figures, the outstanding dues quantum has increased by about 6 to 7,000 crores. Last year's losses were 15,000 crores after all, accounting for subsidies and all. Either it will be at the same level or maybe marginally more than that. I mean, it will be 17,000 crore or something. High-level empowered committee, which looked at certain sectoral issues vis-a-vis stress in the power sector. This is one of the recommendations of the committee that we can examine whether not only companies like PFC, REC, but even some of the banks can explore the possibility of bill discounting. So that recommendation is definitely on the table, and it's being examined in consultation with the Ministry of Finance. We also want some RBI intervention in this matter, actually, as a backstop arrangement and all, but that is where we are still in discussion with the Ministry of Finance.
Well, that's the Power Secretary there on the losses of Discom, the distribution companies, increasing. The big development from the aviation space, a resolution plan to resuscitate Jet Airways could be in place as early as tomorrow. We learned that lenders to the ailing airline will meet tomorrow to chalk out a glide path. We are also given to understand that as part of that plan, promoter Naresh Goyal is likely to step down from the board and give up majority control. Ritu, who's been tracking that story, joins us now. So Ritu, lenders meet tomorrow. This is going to be crucial. It will decide Naresh Goyal's future, and he may finally have to bite the bullet and give up control.
Absolutely. In fact, the resolution talks have been on between Naresh Goyal, Jet Airways, Etihad Airways, along with all the lenders to the aviation company for quite a couple of months now since that first default happened, and banks only have that 180-day window to find a resolution, failing which the company will head into bankruptcy courts as per RBI's Feb 12 circular. Now, what we're given to understand is tomorrow is when all the lenders to Jet Airways will be meeting to finalize what they're working on, which will be a resolution plan for the company, which involves part conversion of that 8,000 crore rupees of debt into equity, which means an SBI-led consortium will then have stake in Jet Airways if the restructuring plan is approved by all the lenders. Second, we understand Naresh Goyal has to go. The lenders have made it very clear that he will have to give up his board seat, and his stake in the airline will also fall after restructuring to almost half of its current level, which is at 51%. So we can see his stake falling to between 20 to 25% once the restructuring is implemented. In addition, we understand his son Nivan Goyal could be inducted on the board of Jet in a compromise of sorts between the lenders and the current promoters. And, also we're given to understand that Etihad may have to bring in some funds for this restructuring proposal to finally go through, which means their stake could rise from the current 24%. Do remember, under, the foreign ownership norms and the FDI norms, a foreign airline can hold up to 49% stake. So it remains to be seen to what extent it rises, if at all. All of those details will emerge after the lenders meeting. We're expecting some resolution to be reached for Jet Airways as early as this week.
Much anticipated and much awaited. Appreciate you joining us with the latest on the Jet Airways story, Ritu. Now, the shares of Yes Bank rallied more than 4% today, and the stock was the top gainer on the Nifty. The rally was fueled by reports that Ravneet Gill, the current CEO of Deutsche Bank India, is the front runner for the top job at the bank. Remember, the company has been searching for a new CEO after Rana Kapoor didn't get the Reserve Bank's nod for an extension. Abhishek Kothari is standing by with more details. Abhishek, what are you picking up? Could it be Ravneet Gill?
Sources tell CNBC TV18 that Ravneet Gill, that is the CEO of Deutsche Bank, is the #1 name in the list that has been given by the board to RBI. Now, there are two names that have been given in the order of hierarchy or preference that Yes Bank has, as to replace MD and CEO in terms of Rana Kapoor when he exits. So Ravneet Gill has led Deutsche Bank in India for 6 years and has over 30 years of experience across various banking verticals. Now, this candidature may get a swift approval by RBI, given the fact that just 6 months back RBI had renewed the term at Deutsche Bank for Ravneet Gill. Due diligence therefore may reduce and time won't be taken that much with RBI. So Rajat Monga is the second candidate or the #2 name in the list, while Yes Bank has not responded to our story.
On to an exclusive from the e-retail space. Amazon has sent an email to sellers communicating concession in commission rates for certain brands, which is valid till the 15th of February. The move is being opposed by online vendors who allege that this implies differential treatment given to certain brands in light of the recent changes to the e-commerce FDI policy. Remember, those changes are applicable starting the 1st of February. Priya joins us now with more details. Priya, take us through the objections that are being raised by the vendors and Amazon's response.
Well, absolutely. This issue pertains to an email that Amazon sent its sellers offering limited period concession in commission rates for certain brands. Now, these brands include the likes of Powmax, Fitness, Kamachi, Swagtron and many more brands basically belonging to the outdoor as well as sports category, bicycle as well as gym equipment category. Now, these promotional rates are in the range of about 2 to 8.5% and are valid until 15th of February. Now, do remember that this is an exercise that Amazon conducts on a regular basis with different brands. However, in light of the recent changes in the FDI policy on e-commerce, there are online vendors who have alleged that this differential treatment to sellers by Amazon is something that they are against at this point in time, and they are seeking some sort of transparency in the process through which Amazon selects these brands that are promoted on a day-to-day or a month-on-month basis. Now, essentially, the recent changes in the FDI policy on e-commerce state that a marketplace cannot directly or indirectly influence the price of goods and services, and also they should maintain a level playing field with regards to the selling on the online space. So it'll be interesting to note how this shapes up, because do remember that players are in discussion with the government on a series of issues and on the implications of this change. So any sort of clarifications will be communicated to sellers is what we are picking up from our sources. In fact, we did reach out to the parties concerned. AIOVA, which is the Online Vendors Association, said that they are unclear if any of these promotional programs are in compliance with the new policy, while Amazon said that they are remaining saying committed to comply and are in compliance with all the applicable laws and regulations with regards to the overall system.
That the agri-sector is under stress is no secret. With almost a fortnight to go for the vote on account, anticipation is building up about the possibility of a farm loan package being announced. At the recently concluded BJP National Convention, a resolution was adopted to deal with the farm sector. The Prime Minister said that his government did not believe in half-baked measures and that his government's policies would take time, but the gains would be seen in the long term. Meanwhile, there have been questions raised about the Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. The government's reply to an RTI query recently showed that it is the insurance companies who've majorly benefited from this scheme, with their profits shooting up from 6,000 to 9,000 crore rupees between FY17 to FY18. Now, if we rewind even further, since 2008, both state and central governments have relied on farm loan waivers as a popular move to try and elevate some of the farmers' pain, but economists don't subscribe to the method. The reason is that this cumulative loan waiver is now close to 3 lakh crore rupees, and this has a tendency to undermine an honest credit culture and therefore impacts credit discipline. So what are the alternate solutions? Now, an income support scheme has been talked about. It is being considered by the government and a final decision is awaited. SBI Soumyakanti Ghosh estimates that a pan-India scheme only for small and marginal farmers could be a scaled-down version and could cost about 60 to 70,000 crore rupees. CNBC TV 18 has learned that there could be tweaks to the Kisan Credit Scheme. In fact, SBI's economist suggests permitting banks to renew the Kisan Credit Card facility to a farmer on the payment of interest alone, not the principal. But just interest alone will help the banks and the farmers to keep the ball rolling and avoid an NPA. Ghosh also suggests that a suitable mechanism to enable access for lessee cultivator to formal banking credit without compromising landowners' rights is of utmost importance. And finally, we also learned that changes could be made to the Fasal Bima Yojana. Here, Ghosh suggests enhancing the scheme to cover all crops. Joining us now to take this discussion forward, Chairman of the Karnataka Agriculture Prices Commission, T.N. Prakash, Chief Advisor of the Consortium of Indian Farmers Association, P. Chengal Reddy, the former Agriculture Secretary, Siraj Hussain, and the founder of Swaraj Abhiyan, Yogendra Yadav. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us. As I said, anticipation is building up. There was a lot of speculation whether this was a matter that was taken up by the Cabinet at its last meeting, whether it will be taken up by the Cabinet when it meets tomorrow. But what we are given to understand that no final decision has been taken on the contours of this farm package. Let's start by talking about the solutions offered. Number one, a price or an income support scheme. And Yogendra Yadav, I'll start by asking you this because, you know, post-Bhavantar in Madhya Pradesh, this was being touted as a solution that was effective, as a solution that would work. But after the experience...
What the farmers are demanding is legally guaranteed remunerative prices of other things. It is not that the government would say, okay, forget procurement, forget MSP, we are giving you this income transfer. That would be a disaster. Number two, if that income transfer takes place, it should go not only to landowners, but also to those who do tenant cultivation. And three, it should be supplementing all other efforts.
Siraj Hussain, former Agriculture Secretary, let me ask you, sir, both on a price or an income support scheme. And there seems to now be the view that what we have seen by way of the Bhavantar program, etc., have actually distorted the market and have not really translated into benefit for the farmer on the ground. When we talk about an income support scheme, if it were to be for small and marginal farmers, which is what SBI seems to be suggesting, and given the cost, even though Yogendra believes that this is a check that the government ought to be writing, but given the fiscal constraints, if it is going to be for small and marginal farmers, what is it that you would like to see as part of this?
I think so far the thinking within the government has been that another scheme for income transfer without any modifications in the existing system of subsidies is going to be wasteful. That was the thinking till recently. After the elections, however, it seems that now, because of the pressure built by media, the government is seriously considering an income transfer scheme. But obviously, for any scheme of this dimension, a lot more consultation is needed, whether it should be only for small and marginal farmers, whether, you know, I have written about it, a small and marginal farmer of sugar cane is not at par with the small and marginal farmer growing pulses in an unirrigated area.
Right.
So whether the government will treat everybody at par, those who receive MSP, those who do not receive MSP. Now these are the matters of detail which I am afraid, because of paucity of time, will not be considered by the government.
Okay.
So yes, if the government has to give something by way of income support, I think within the present budgetary constraints, we may well see a scheme only for small and marginal farmers.
Small and marginal farmers, and again I point out that SBI estimates the cost to be between 60 and 70,000 crore rupees. Mr. Chengal Reddy, let me ask you now, sir, because some of the other suggestions that we are picking up that the government may consider as part of this multi-pronged effort to address the agriculture sector are changes to the Kisan Credit Card scheme, for instance, also changes to the Fasal Bima Yojana. I'll come to the Fasal Bima Yojana in just a second, but as far as the Kisan Credit Card scheme is concerned, what kind of changes would you anticipate? What kind of changes would you like to see? For instance, one of the suggestions is let the ball get rolling by paying only the interest, even if the principal amount is not being paid. Is that going to be enough to provide some relief?
See, the issues have come to a boiling point now before Mr. Modi. What we want Mr. Modi to consider in this budget is, firstly, how can you reduce the cost of the production?
Okay.
Here, there are two things which he can immediately, within 100 days, let us say that after elections, he can implement. So one is link Manrega, Mahatma Gandhi scheme, with all the entire farming activity, increase the budget from whatever it is now. The second is go in for a total mechanization.
Okay.
Because you see, here is a big problem where it's not evident anywhere. The labor is not available. We are not able to harvest, nor we are able to do plantation.
Let me go across to Mr. T.N. Prakash. Mr. Prakash, you know, I think consensus on the panel that time has perhaps run out, though Mr. Chengal Reddy believes that over the next 100 days, there can be some measures that the government can take. Now, if I were to ask you specifically about some of the measures that are being speculated, and this is information that we're picking up from our sources, this is being considered, you know, changes to the Kisan Credit Card scheme, changes to the Fasal Bima Yojana to include all crops, for instance. Give me your specifics that you believe can be done and should be done.
The farmers have given the abundance to the nation, but at the cost of what you know very well, woes, crisis. So let me make it very clear. These are the measures, these are required, no doubt. But if you want to address the issues related to crisis, woes, we have to think something beyond routine, beyond obvious. Okay, let me make it very clear. You have mentioned crisis. Where does the crisis lies? Whether is it in agriculture as a sector or in the farmers. I have been placing some very important demand before the parliament. There are already 2 bills are there. So in addition to all these measures, you know, can we get into some sort of legal support on 2 major burning issues? One is on, it's not the loan waiver, it's a debt to make the peasantry of this country totally free from debt at least once. Then to see that they don't get back to debt once again. Then number 2, the prices, you know, is there any legal approach to the price? I think given the short time, you know, of 100 days, the nation could definitely commit on these 2 things. Absolutely, there is no legal approach to the pricing. You announce the MSP and you allow the transaction to take place at a price much lower than the MSP. So that's why, you know, some sort of legal approach to at least these 2 things. Guaranteeing prices, remunerative prices to farmers. There should not be any transaction below MSP or whatever the price you can say. And also farmers should not be caught into debt once again. So I think in addition to those discussions, you know, those points, you know, have been raised. These drastic thinking, I think the government can definitely commit on these 2 things.
Mr. Chengal Reddy, very quickly, you know, in 30 seconds, final words on what you realistically expect, given everything that you've heard so far from the government.
See, I mean, as far as we farmers are concerned, anybody connected with the political system, we deal them with a we have a lot of pinch of salt. We don't have much confidence. Only thing is, let me see, because if Mr. Modi comes out during this budget speech, maybe tomorrow Congress or Mahakotami or these regional parties, these so-called political leaders of farmers, let us see what they are going to do. We are awaiting, because there is nothing, we are not, I mean, we know them, we will, let us see, because you know that, let 1 second I'll take you. Have you ever thought that for 10 years, Mr. Sharad Pawar, a farmers leader, was agriculture minister in Congress party for 10 years and he didn't do anything. And here is in this same present party, there is Mr. Rajnath Singh and so many others who are there as from farming communities. What have they done?
Yogendra Yadav, Siraju Sen, Chengal Reddy and T.N. Prakash. Appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV 18 to discuss the alternatives to farm loan waivers and the package that the government...
Back here with India Business Hour Plus, let's revisit the top story of the day, and that is UK's Prime Minister Theresa May facing virtually certain defeat as British lawmakers are set to vote on her Brexit deal. The opposition may move a no-confidence vote against the British Prime Minister if her proposal is defeated with substantial margin. However, Associate Editor and Chief Economics Commentator at the Financial Times, Martin Wolf, expects the British Prime Minister to win that vote. Here's an excerpt of his conversation with my colleague Sapna Das on the sidelines of the 7th NCAER C.D. Deshmukh Memorial Lecture.
It is widely expected that she will lose the vote. It's not certain, but it seems very highly probable. Then there will be a confidence vote in her, in the government, put forward by the opposition. I expect her to win that vote because I think the Conservatives and the Ulster Unionist Democrat, DUP as it's called, will vote together, in which case she will have a majority, because these people don't want Labour to come in. They want the Conservative Party to survive. They're very, very concerned about this. So I expect her to remain in power, probably, but her main policy is gone. Right. What will happen then? I suspect that she will go to Brussels and she will say, well, you have to give me some more. And they will find some form of words that makes it look better. And she will come back to the House. And by this time, it'll only maybe 6 weeks before, or 4 weeks before we leave. And at this point, the Parliament House will have to consider, do we really want no deal or do we give the Prime Minister's deal? So that's the most likely outcome. The alternative is that even though she remains in power, there is a coalition of parliamentarians that impose upon the government a different policy. And that would probably be another referendum. But my view is either the Prime Minister gets her deal through in the end, maybe after 2 or 3 times, or we end up with no deal and we leave with no deal. That seems those seem to be the most likely outcomes from where we are now.
Right, so no deal, but in the sense you expect her to still win the confidence vote.
Yes.
That's a critical part.
I expect, it is expected, I think it is plausible, nothing is certain here, that we would have a Prime Minister who survives even though her most important policy has failed. We have a fixed-term Parliament Act, so the fact that she loses such an issue doesn't mean that she's lost her majority more generally. She has a majority. I expect that to survive a confidence vote. So we would be in the completely unprecedented situation of a Prime Minister who has the confidence of the House, but whose main policy the House will not legislate or will not support. So that's a major constitutional crisis, but then it is a crisis.
One quick question on this front, a no-deal situation, what does it really mean? And also a no-deal kind of a scenario, do you see any impact on the pound sterling, on the financial markets, or do you expect that to be pretty contained?
Well, first, we don't know what a no deal will mean. Nobody really knows. I think that it would be disruptive in the short run. There are lots of things that are likely to happen that will be a mess because we have not prepared for this sudden transition in our trading arrangements from what they are now to what they would be. So there could be quite significant disruption. It would be plausible that there will be significant turbulence in financial markets.
All right, Martin Wolf there of Financial Times saying that Theresa May will stay in power with or without the Brexit vote. Now, over 97% of children in the 6 to 14 years age group belonging to rural India enrolled into schools in 2018. This is according to the annual status of education report by independent NGO Pratham. And remember, this is the first time that overall school enrollment in rural India reached such a staggering figure. And that's not all. There has also been a decline in the proportion of girls out of school across all age groups. This year, ASAR reached out to 596 districts in rural India and surveyed over 3.54 lakh households and over 5 lakh children in the 3 to 16 year age group. Archana Shukla joins us now with the key findings of this report. Archana, over to you.
Well, yes, Ritu, the success of Right to Education Act can be seen in the enrollments in schools in rural India that has stayed above 95% since 2007. But ASAR 2018 survey shows that out-of-school numbers is also declining. The gender gap is shrinking with out-of-school girls' percentage coming down. Enrollment in private schools has seen a substantial jump since 2006 across states, but last 4 years have not seen an overall increase. But on the question of acquiring foundational skills in literacy and numeracy, ASAR 2018 survey shows we are still a long way off. Still, about 73% children are not at grade level, which means a standard 3 child cannot read a standard 2 textbook. States like Punjab, Haryana, Mizoram, Uttar Pradesh have shown a good improvement in grade level learning, though. Levels in basic arithmetic problem solving have shown no improvements. Over 80% children in government schools and 70% children overall in rural India still can't do basic arithmetic. There is, however, wide variation across states, with states like Kerala, Haryana, Gujarat, Punjab seeing improvement, but then states like Andhra Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Bihar, Karnataka showing a decline. In Standard 8, more than half of all children are still struggling with basic divisions. Well, to understand these findings and to go deeper into this discussion, joining us right now is Madhav Chavan, who's co-founder and CEO of Pratham, NGO Pratham, the parent body of ASAR. Madhav, thank you so much for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. First up, we've seen some improvements as far as grade level learning is concerned, and especially some good improvements in certain states. Where do you think the larger challenge now is before grade level learning in India, in rural India, actually can take that leapfrog?
Before we reach the grade level learning, I think as ASAR is pointing out, we have not even succeeded in getting most children fluent in reading at the second standard level. So that is the first big obstacle in reading. And even in arithmetic, unless children can learn simple basic operations, to assume that they are going to be able to do bigger problem solving and understand science, is a tough call. We shouldn't. We have a long way to go yet. So that's the first part that we need to clear in the beginning.
If we go deeper into the data, and I was looking at the state level data, particularly in arithmetic problem solving, we've seen actually the numbers go down for certain states. What would explain that?
Numbers have been going down in different states for a long time now. So clearly our ability to teach arithmetic, or the children's desire to learn arithmetic, has been going down for a long time. If you look at Bihar, Bihar was in a decent shape in 2005-06 when we first measured, and people used to wonder how come that is possible. But over the last 12-13 years, continuously Bihar has declined in reading and in arithmetic, which is not a good sign. What that says is that the school is dysfunctional, and something is wrong with the process. It's not working out. Well, the good part in this report is that in some states, you are actually seeing small improvements. They're small, and by no means, I mean, if in 2005 we were here, then we came down here in 2012, and now by 2018 we have climbed up in some states and in the country as well. But we have not gone beyond where we were in 2006 even, and there's a much bigger challenge as yet. The only thing that says is we are not doing a good job. It's the system is dysfunctional.
Right. one very interesting figure was that the private school enrollments are plateauing. Is that a one-off, or can we say that the government schools are improving? What is the reason for this sort of a trend in rural India?
Well, we actually in ASAD, we don't try to interpret reasons. We are presenting the data, and a lot of other people will be able to try and interpret, make sense out of many of these things, including the learning levels and so on. Clearly, whatever is happening is related to some other facts. But in case of private school enrollment, I don't think it's very straightforward. It is entirely possible that it has nothing to do with the quality of schooling. It could just be an economic factor. If you look at Kerala, for example, now Kerala private schools are quite good. Government schools are not bad either. And yet in Kerala, we see that the percentage of children going to private schools has declined by a few percentage points. Now, what would explain that? I don't know. We are aware that a lot of people from Kerala are not going to the Middle East anymore, and maybe that is a reflection of that as well. So there could be multiple reasons, and we are not willing to take I'm not willing to take a guess.
Okay, just to understand briefly, if you could put, what were for you some of the positive surprises in this year's report versus what we had seen till 2016 as far as learning outcomes is concerned on various states, and very briefly, if you could highlight what was a very negative surprise that you came through.
The positive surprise is exactly this, that, see, we started noticing that the learning levels started dropping, and if you say correlationally, then when the Right to Education Act was passed in the Parliament and enforced from 2010, the government kept denying that learning levels were dropping, but our numbers said that the learning levels were dropping, and they continued to drop till 2012-14. And as one of my colleagues remarked, they almost hit the rock bottom. But after that, in many states, things have started picking up. Now, there are two factors here. One is there's a change of government, but there's also the factor that the system had started. By 2012, the Planning Commission at that point had taken note and has started insisting that learning outcomes are important, although MHRD did not really pay attention to it. And then more and more state governments, including the Government of India, also the Government of India started taking note of this fact, and everybody started emphasizing learning outcomes. The Government of India conducted a massive national assessment survey to add to its own, add to whatever Asar was saying. They found out that the numbers were not all that different. So the awareness and the consciousness of this problem has grown, and I think that is leading to a change.
Well,
that is bound to be.
Oh, well, Madhav, thank you so much for that. And, a lot of the findings of ASAR as well as the other findings like that of NAS is going to come a long way for the states when they go ahead and implement the amendment to Right to Education Act now, which calls for scrapping of no detention policies, which means that children in class 3, 5 and 8 can now be failed for non-performance. Well, Madhav, thank you so much for bringing perspective on ASAR Report 2018. Thank you for joining in to CNBC TV 18.
Well, Mr. Madhav and Archana, thank you both for taking us through this conversation. But here's some news from the auto space then. The National Green Tribunal has proposed a 171 crore fine on Volkswagen as health damages for causing air pollution in India. However, the German car maker has responded, saying its vehicles are compliant with Indian emission norms. Parikshit Luthra joins us with more on the story. Parikshit, take us through the details of what Volkswagen has to say and what the National Green Tribunal had to say about the emission norms.
The 171 crore rupee fine on the Volkswagen Group in India, recommended by the NGT-appointed panel, had come as a huge embarrassment for Volkswagen in India. The company has now responded, saying that they meet all emission norms in India, and even the NGT-appointed panel has accepted that they are not violating any BS4 norms. Sources in Volkswagen are telling us that they would be contesting this particular recommendation, which says that a fine needs to be imposed on the company as there has been health damage, and therefore a fine needs to be imposed. Because they feel that the report itself is contradictory. On one hand, they say that no emission norms have been violated, and on the other, the panel is recommending a fine. Sources also go on to say that this is not a final report, not a final order. This is only a recommendation, only a report by a panel which was appointed by the National Green Tribunal. We're yet to see the final order in the case, and the issue is still pending in a court of law. They also go on to say that the recall of vehicles that had taken place in the past, that was only to upgrade software in cars according to global norms, and this had nothing to do with the emission scandal that had been reported.
All right, Parikshit, thank you very much for bringing us that. Now, staying with the auto space, Tata Motors today launched 14 new customized vehicles for the e-commerce sector. Speaking to CNBC TV 18's Parikshit Luthra, Girish Wagh, the president of Tata Motors Commercial Vehicle Unit, said that the e-commerce sector is likely to grow at 35 to 40% over the next 4 to 5 years. And Tata Motors expects 8 to 9% of their cargo vehicle sales to happen through the e-commerce space. Listen in.
So these are 14 existing vehicles but newly modified, is that right?
Correct. These are newly customized.
Right. Newly customized. Can you tell us, sir, what are the changes that have been made for the e-commerce sector especially?
Okay, so what we've done is, see, we have looked at the entire e-commerce sector, and the e-commerce sector has been growing at a rate of almost 35 to 40%. And within that, 45% of their logistics requirements are met by road, that is commercial vehicles. And when I say this, it's hub to hub for bigger vehicles, so medium and heavy commercial vehicles, or hub to spoke for intermediate and light commercial vehicles, and then finally coming to last mile distribution, which is done by the small commercial vehicles.
Okay.
Now, the e-commerce sector on the last count was almost 35 to 36 billion US dollars, and growing at a rate of 35-40%. So it's a very important sector. And for Tata Motors, almost 8 to 9% of our cargo vehicle sales across the product lines now happens to the e-commerce sector.
Okay.
And therefore it becomes very important for us. And while we look at e-commerce as just one sector, I think there are very clear specific requirements. So what we did,
I think we can move
we actually met a lot of customers, and this has been happening over a period of 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
So we understood their requirements, we understood their pain points, and then we finally came up with vehicles which actually meet some of those specific requirements. So what you see here, for example, is a last mile distribution vehicle on ACE platform, wherein there is a compartmentalization, right? So you can have segregation of the goods. You will also see that there is an opening on that side. So at times you want to keep the goods from here, but also take out from that side.
From that side as well.
So that kind of flexibility is being provided.
Okay.
So this is one.
And if we look at these vehicles, sir, can you tell us about the tweaks and modifications?
So for example, if you look at this vehicle, this has been made on our ACE Zip platform, meant specifically for fruits and vegetables. So if you see in small commercial vehicles, this sector, along with dairy and poultry, is one of the big sectors, and it accounts for more than 50% of the entire vehicle sale. So for this, we have therefore created a specific shape as well as interiors so that it can meet their requirements.
Now, the government has allocated an additional 6,000 crore rupees to the Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, MNREGA. Now, this comes days after nearly several lawmakers and prominent civil society members wrote to the Prime Minister raising concerns over the fund crunch. Anshu Sharma has more details on the story. Anshu, what are you picking up? Isn't this the highest allocation under the scheme so far?
Right, it's the highest ever allocation for Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Now, the budget estimates for FY19 was at 55,000 crore, and today government has said that it has allocated additional 6,084 crore at a revised estimate stage, making it a total allocation of 61,084 crore. Now, in addition to this, MNRGS has witnessed a record expenditure of 63,644 crore in FY18, including the state share. Now, the highest it has been since the program was launched. Now, this year is going to be even higher, is what government sources have told CNBC TV 18. Now, in FY18, allocation for this MNREGS scheme was at 48,000 crore, which was revised to 55,000 crore before the financial year end. The scheme provides employment guarantee to an individual for a minimum 100 days a year and helps create individual and community infrastructure in rural India. Even generation of payment are done within 15 days, which has moved up from 26% in FY15 to 91% in the current financial year. Now, this affirms that the scheme is quite popular and government has eased wage payment to the beneficiaries by linking Aadhaar and making direct benefit transfer to the beneficiaries. Now, at least we know now that FY20 budget will have to be allocated at least at 61,000 crore for MNREGA's scheme alone for the rural India. Back to you.
An entrepreneur, a bureaucrat, a politician and a tech visionary, Nandan Nilekani has donned many hats and excelled in each role. The year 2018 marked not only Nilekani's return to Infosys, but also cemented his standing in the tech world. And that's the least of the reasons why we have nominated Nandan Nilekani for the Lifetime Achievement Award at cnbc TV 18 India Business Leader Awards for 2018. His journey started in 1978 at Patni Computers, where he was interviewed by N.R. Narayan Murthy. 3 years later, Nandan Nilekani, along with Murthy and 5 other Patni employees, started Infosys, which is now India's second largest IT company by revenues. In 2002, Nilekani became the CEO of Infosys. In his 5-year tenure at the helm, Infosys' top line grew 6-fold to cross $3 billion. In 2009, Nilekani left Infosys to take over as chairman of the Unique Identification Authority of India, a post that he accepted on the invitation of the then Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh. The UIDAI developed the Aadhaar card, which overhauled India's digital ecosystem. In 2014, Nilekani joined the Indian National Congress and contested from the Bangalore South constituency. In 2017, Nilekani returned to Infosys after the then chairman R. Seshasai, co-chairman Ravi Venkateshan and CEO Vishal Sikka resigned from their positions. He then took charge of restoring investor confidence and turning around the company, hiring Capgemini's Salil Parekh in early 2018 to take on the reins of Infosys. He continues to remain the non-executive chairman of the company. Over the years, Nandan has been a serial investor with at least 12 startup investments. Nandan Nilekani and his wife Rohini donated half of their wealth to Giving Pledge, a movement organized by Bill Gates. He has also been appointed to head a digital payments panel led by the Reserve Bank of India, and that's why Nandan Nilekani has been nominated for the Lifetime Achievement Award at the cnbc TV 18 India Business Leader Award 2018. Alright, with that, it's a wrap on this edition of India Business Hour. Thank you very much for watching and have a good night.